Welcome to the Soil Camp Podcast, Episode 4. This podcast was produced and recorded with the support of CJSW Campus and Community Radio, found at 90.9 on the FM dial or at cjsw.com. As the soil is fundamental to the existence and well-being of the entire food web, so is acknowledging the land fundamental to Soil Camp. We give thanks to the Indigenous peoples who have cared for and lived with and on the land since time immemorial, and who continue to tend to the more than human relationships here in Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge the Blackfoot or Niitsitapi Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Iahe Nakota Nations, Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney, and the Tsuut'ina Nation, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. My name is San, and I've been involved with Soil Camp for the last 3 years as a teacher and facilitator. I am honored and excited to share some of the Soil Camp story with you in hopes that it might spark inspiration and rekindle hope by providing an example of how visionary grassroots projects can make a difference. This final episode of the Soil Camp podcast highlights some of the core themes and key ideas of Soil Camp while dreaming about next steps. It features the second half of the conversation with Miwa, Kori, Tatenda, and Mathew from episode 1. And just FYI, this recording was made using a Zoom mic at a table while having tea and snacks, so it has that cozy grassroots feel.
My concept of when it's dirt and when it's soil is like dirt's what's under your fingernails and like on your boots when you come in the house. Mm-hmm. You have to shovel, like put it, sweep up, and then the soil is what's in the ground. That's the difference. Yeah. Dirt you wash off your hands. The soil is what's out where your plants are growing. If you want to. That's how I distinguish it. Yeah.
What did you say? Like dirt?
Dirt is a displaced soil.
Displaced soil. Or it's like dirt is not alive. Like it's on your hands, it's on your boots. It's not where it's home. It's displaced from its home.
And there is lots of parallel because we work with communities who were forcefully displaced and thinking about the difference between the soil as rich, complex web of life versus dirt as those displaced soil. So how can we relive those soil again, and how can we make the interaction with the soil again, especially for those communities, I feel.
Even like if you think of what then that compacted soil, what is then not missing or can't, thrive within that soil without that, those spaces, those voids, the air, everything that's supposed to be in, and all the ancestors that are supposed to be there helping each other are not there. You need more gophers to aerate.
or daikon.
Daikon, right. Yeah, we tried. Yeah.
It was really dry that year, so it didn't quite work out.
It didn't, but the initial intention behind it was daikon has a very deep root, so if we grow it on the compact soil, in my ability to some compact, is that...
Even the mechanized agricultural system of tillage causes that compaction to happen. Mm-hmm. Maybe not quite as bad as out on the Land of Dream site, but it causes that let's call it a tillage pen. Mm-hmm. And one way that people get rid of tillage pans is they basically do something called deep ripping, where they take a bigger machine with bigger spikes to put it in the ground, and they pull that behind. So they basically just push the compaction. It fixes it in the top 12 inches or 15, 20 centimeters, but it just pushes it lower down. Doesn't that? So that's the method. It works really fast, but then it's doing other things. So the other way is to use something like daikon, or they say tillage radish. It's coming out of Wisconsin originally, that concept. Dr. Wheel, whether you plant daikon radish, which have a very strong taproot, and those taproots then naturally push through that hard compacted layer. And then what they then serve is when you don't harvest, so this is when I've talked to some people in southern Alberta, because I come from southern Alberta, they're farmers, they think if you put a plant in the ground, you got to pull it out. Like, that's just what you do. Like, no, you put it in the ground and you leave it. And then once it gets winter killed and whatnot, then it serves as a reservoir of organic matter for soil critters to eat. And then it forms what's called like a biopore, which is a fancy way of saying it's like a channel for water and whatnot, some nutrients and gases to go in and out.
So just to recap for listeners, we've established that dirt is just what we call displaced soil. Let's think about what that means and listen to what Tatenda and Kori are saying about it.
And the funny thing is, at Simon Farm, I've dug a few soil pits with some students, and the places I see the best soil are places we're not cultivating, right? And it's this insight of, we always talk about, I want healthy soil. And it's like, well, like you said one time, healthy for what? Good for what purpose?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's always assumed in agriculture that when you say healthy soil, it's healthy to grow plants, right? But even with the student project that we did this last term, like they did a soil test, and a lot of the metrics were great. And the guy wanted to chop that forest down to plant stuff, and it's like, well, you say you want a good soil, you've got good soil. If you're going to chop that stuff down, you're not going to have good soil anymore.
Soil is our ancestor. We are from the soil. We go back to the soil. It is that cycle. And has anyone read the new Robin Kimmerer Serviceberry?
Not yet.
It's on my to-read
Me
list.
too, yeah.
It's fantastic. And I love, I guess, talking about reciprocity, and often we don't think about that with the land. We take so much, like from, we take the nutrients, like you were saying to Tatenda, we're taking so much, but we're not, taking care of the soil. We're not giving back. And I like how, it is this reciprocity economy that Robin Kimmerer speaks of.
The conversation circles back to the idea of listening to the land. We can expand the concept of listening to include other ways of observing and taking in information.
Is the hill just eroding and getting like less steep because that's just an outcome of erosion, or is it just because that's what it wants to do? Like there was one time I was in a ravine, I was just like looking at a hill like that, and I'm like, well, there's two ways you can look at it, right? It's just a mechanistic thing where it's just there's erosion happening, so you get a big rainfall, get a slump event, and then it forms like this. But I'm like, is that just happening because that's just going to happen, or is it just like what it wants to do? So that, I think, was one of the things, is like, what does the soil want to be here?
The land is like telling a story. Like every time you look at it anywhere, like there, you can tell sort of what came before or what is happening. Like if you look closely or have questions like, why is this here, or why is this soil a different color? It's telling a story. And I think sometimes we just take it for granted that this is just the way it is, but it's like everything's changing all the time. And how is it changing and why? And like how can we be more sensitive to that? And I think that's like a way of listening to like the story, I guess.
I've always liked that, like Miwa, you've always been saying, this is alongside, or this is with the land, and I think that's really important. And it's not that hierarchy of humans over dirt, which often would be said, and that I can help, I can protect, I can save, that again, that ego of that. But it's, it's even that that's taking a step back, like you said. We don't have to do something all the time. Sometimes just chill and learn, listen, and just be present. And I was just the other day looking at some of the curriculum. Won't get into that, but that's there's it's everywhere that I can protect that protected areas. Those what are the other words? Like conservation areas. I get it, but it's like human. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, okay, humans now, we know the best. We need to figure out, how to do this. And I mean, often that is not Indigenous people or caretakers of lands, of which are the seemingly authority or people that are leading that. So I think that understanding what is not there is just as important as understanding what is there. And I think that humility is we've been talking about.
We wrapped up the conversation with a question about what comes next. What hopes do we have for the future of Soil Camp, or hopes for the future in general? And how can we dream with the soil?
I'll just say, I think as Franklin D. Roosevelt said, the nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. And that was, of course, coming out of the 1930s and the Dust Bowl. And so I think, again, that education aspect is very important to, especially given the climate crisis and the overconsumption and conversion of agricultural land to build giant houses that in, car-centric living. All of those things all kind of culminate together into that potential for destroying the soil, and then in doing so you end up destroying yourself. I think there's hope in that younger people can learn some appreciation for the fact that the things they eat are coming from the soil. So in essence, you are again in that link of that chain, and then. That's kind of my hope is just that more of that appreciation.
My only thought really relates to something that you said, and I think of like growing something, and it feels like a miracle every time. Like, wow, I put this seed in the ground, and like now it's this giant plant, and I can eat from it. And I think for many reasons, partly because of capitalism and we don't know where our food comes from, we're disconnected from it. I think we start to maybe look at growing food as like a machine. Like I put this input and I put X amount of water and whatever, and I'm going to get this thing. And I would love for myself to reconnect to that idea of this is a miracle, and realize that it is a gift, and if kids can grow up with that appreciation, I think that would lead to better relationships with nature.
And that concludes the final episode of the Soil Camp podcast. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Miwa, Kori, Tatenda, and Mathew. Thanks to the Soil Camp project, which you can find at soilcamp.ca. And big thanks to CJSW Campus and Community Radio Station for supporting the production of the podcast. Find this podcast and other incredible programming online at cjsw.com.